Hi guys, welcome back to another video. Today you join me in the 2024 facelifted Hyundai i20, a compact car that rivals things like the Ford Fiesta, the Volkswagen Polo, Skoda Fabia, Vauxhall Corsa, Renault Clio, etc, etc. And I think that this one is a particularly strong contender in that category. Although it has some trade-offs, I'm going to tell you why that you should consider one of these. So the i20 starts here in the UK at the moment with this new facelifted model at around £21,000, but you do get some pretty generous kit as standard, to be fair. The entry-level model is called the Advanced, and it comes with these two 10.25-inch displays, one of which has Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, lane keep assist, reversing cameras standard, rear parking sensors, 16-inch alloy wheels, and LED headlamps. I would say though it's worth stepping up to the second in the range, which is the Premium at around 23,000. That one comes with the air conditioning and climate control, which I think should be as standard anyway, to be fair. But it also comes with heated steering wheel, front heated seats and front parking sensors, and some slightly larger, nicer alloy wheels. Then there's the one that I'm in today, which is the £24,000 Ultimate. The Ultimate comes with blind spot warning, a Bose stereo system, keyless entry, a sunroof as standard, which I do think is really good that Kia and Hyundai include those in their specifications now rather than as an optional extra, and also a spot to wirelessly charge your phone. There's also, for the same price, an N-Line S, which is just a kind of similar car to this one but with a more sporty exterior. Drivetrain options are pretty easy. There's two options to choose from, and I think it's a shame they don't include more, to be fair, but if you want something fast, there's always the i20N, which is a totally different animal. This one, the standard i20, comes with a 3-cylinder engine across the board, petrol, 1-litre turbo, mild hybrids, so there's a little bit of boost on the lower end, a bit like an EcoBoost engine from Ford. You either get 100 horsepower or 120 horsepower. The one I've got here is the entry-level 100 horsepower model with a 7-speed dual-clutch automatic transmission. You can also get a 6-speed manual. It's a bit slower to 60 with the auto, about 11.4 seconds, so it's not particularly the fastest thing in the world, but it's not too bad. The thing is, in terms of value, this car seems to hold its money on the used market compared to some of the rivals like the Corsa. And of course, the Fiesta, having been out of production now, you're kind of relying on either going used or getting something like a Ford Puma. This is more expensive off the line than a Skoda Fabia or a Vauxhall Corsa, but you do get more tech and kit as standard, especially the safety stuff. So let's go straight in with the looks of the car then. This new updated design has a facelifted front, and I do think it looks really sharp. This particular model also has the rear fins at the back. It looks quite sporty even as a standard car, especially considering this isn't the N-Line S or the N model. You've got quite a few body styling features that just make it stand out from the crowd that little bit, and it looks quite sharp. I'm not a huge fan of this lucid lime metallic paint. It's a little bit garish for me, but some people will really love it, and it does have a nice metallic flake in the sun. What is pretty cool is this one has matching green accents on the interior, both contrasting stitching and little bits on the dash and the doors as well, which is a no-cost option. I think it looks modern enough with the kind of LED rear lights, although it's a shame it's not a full light bar. Overall, I do think it looks quite interesting in comparison to some of the other cars in this range, although the updated Renault Clio does stand out quite a bit too. Overall, I'd probably describe it as striking. It's just quite an interesting design compared to something a bit more bland. I don't even think it looks too overboard with the sportiness either, because on these standard wheels, it doesn't look like it's trying too hard. Step inside and you've got the usual good Hyundai tech. I'm really impressed with how easy everything is to use. I like the way that things are angled towards the driver, and overall it's just a really nice place to sit. I would say the quality isn't up there with the Volkswagen Audi Group stuff. So for example, the Volkswagen Polo just feels more plush inside. Even the Fabia does a little bit in terms of the material quality. There's lots of really nasty plastics even up high on this, which is a bit of a shame. But overall, the quality is pretty good. The buttons all feel decent. The steering wheel is a nice shape and size in terms of the thickness. And as I say, it's kind of easily accessible. Things are where you expect them to be. It is somewhat basic though, and even though this one's been tightened up a little bit with the lime green accents, you do find that it does look a little bit kind of plastic and basic, especially in comparison to some of the updated rivals. You do get these two screens, which again does make things look a little bit more modern in here, but they're nothing groundbreaking. They look quite standard nowadays. There are some nice touches though. For example, you've got the star buttons, which are shortcut buttons you can program to your liking. You've got the 1-button driving assist on the steering wheel, so you can basically hit that and the car will steer itself on the motorway, no problems at all. And you can also press and hold that button to disable the lane keep assist, which is good because on this car it seems more intrusive than in most other cars that I've driven, even all the Hyundai stuff. It is one of the more intrusive systems overall in the market, but this one, even around town, the steering's tugging me around, but thankfully with a long press you can turn that all off. and you don't have to faff about in the menus for that. Talking of the infotainment is always really good and strong on these, and this is no exception. The quality of it is good, the screen, and it's really responsive. It never crashes or lags on me, and the animations are smooth. It's really easy to find your way around, and I find it less confusing than even some of the more premium options on the market. There's stuff in there like drive profiles, so if you're sharing the car, it's easy to kind of switch your settings between those different people, and all your driver assist stuff is in one place. So if you want to turn off the incessant bonging from the speed warning, you can do so, although be warned that will turn off your traffic sign recognition too. What you're hearing there is the incessant bonging. That's the one thing about this. It will just bong and bong and bong if you go over the speed limit, if the speed limit changes, if you stray over lane, bong, 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 and you have to go in and turn it all off. Of course, you've got Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, and that's what I've been using predominantly, but you do have a decent built-in map. And overall, as I say, things are pretty easy to understand and use. In this high-end car, I've got the Bose audio system, which is pretty good. It's not the best I've heard, but for this size of car, it's quite strong. And you've got plenty of EQ settings that you can tweak as well, which I like. In some cars, you've got some more fiddly settings, and I prefer just to have a traditional EQ like on this one. And then in front of me, this display is clear as well. You've got a couple of different drive profiles. You've got Sport, Eco and Normal, and they will change things like the throttle response and the steering, but they'll also change what the gauge cluster looks like in front of me here. And you do get basic drive information on there. For example, it will tell you when your CarPlay song changes. You can also get some very basic navigation information on there, or your current driving situation. And what I do like is at the bottom, it's got a live MPG readout that tells you your MPG for this particular run. Overall, it's pretty good. It's just not as comprehensive as something from Volkswagen Audi Group, such as, for example, the Volkswagen Polo or the Seat Ibiza, which you can get the full maps on the virtual cockpit. Another nice touch is I find that with all of these Hyundai Kia cars, everything is quite well damped, like the indicator stalks and everything. It feels quite nice to use, and when you use anything, it comes up on screen telling you what's going on, so you don't have to fiddle around and sort of look at the labelling. You've also got the wireless phone charging here, and also a 12 volt 180 watt socket, which is useful, USB-C and USB-A, which is welcome, and then two basic cup holders, which could be better. Sometimes things rattle around in there, they've not got grippers on, but again, it's a cheaper car, so you wouldn't really expect too much from that. And the door bins for this size of car are quite generous actually, which I'm quite impressed with. I can fit my bottle in there plus some other items really easily. Unfortunately on this one, even though I've got blind spot warnings on the mirrors, I don't have the blind spot cameras from the higher end Kia Hyundai cars. As for your climate controls, quite simple to be fair. You've got a proper off switch and an auto button, and you can just toggle the temperature and the fan speed. It is only single zone, unfortunately, and again on the entry level model you don't get all this stuff, so that's a bit of a shame. But I do like the fact that there's physical climate controls. It is really welcome, and there are some touch controls for the navigation and the infotainment system that are capacitive, which I'm not a huge fan of, but there's still a volume dial and an on-off button, so I'm not too fussed about it. It does make it look a little bit cleaner anyway, at least. And then down by my knee, I've got controls for the heated steering wheel and also turning off the auto start stop. One thing I am really impressed with is the seating position. I can get the driving position I like, and I can rest my elbows comfortably on a longer run as well. I like the headrest on this seat, and overall it is comfy for this class of car. The only thing that's not got is an adjustable lumbar, which means that it can be a bit fatiguing on longer journeys, but that's kind of being picky really. As I say, the seats really for this class of car are quite comfy. I've got just the right height for me, and the visibility out the front is really good. Lots of glass. I've also got the sunroof on this one, which is welcome. And then the C-pillars, although they're quite large in this, I've got the reverse camera standard across the range, so it's not really too much of a big deal. When it comes to rear passenger space, I was actually quite impressed. I can fit back there not too bad, considering I'm 6 foot, and the transmission hump isn't too bad either. It's not really ideal, obviously, for long journeys for loads of passengers in sort of adults, but at the end of the day, it's quite spacious for this size of car. I think the only thing that really beats it in terms of that rear passenger space is the Honda Jazz. The same goes for the boot. It's well thought out and practical, and although there is a load lip, there is also an adjustable height floor so that you can put the parcel shelf underneath it, and the seats fold down nicely. It's really easy to use, and overall I think you'd be pretty happy. It's by no means the smallest for this type of car, so I think for most people, as long as you're not expecting it to be cavernous, you'll be more than happy. My only other main quality concern with this interior, besides this nasty plastic, is this sun visor has the crappiest, horrible like thing that covers the mirror I've ever felt. Like it feels like, you know them mirrors that you get in Christmas crackers that have got the flappy covers? That's what it feels like. It's rubbish. You do have ISOFIX points in the back, and they're covered with zips, which I don't mind too much, to be fair. and the door opening is pretty decent. So overall, for such a small car, I would say it scores quite well for practicality. So let's talk about how it drives then. So it is a little bit firmer than some other cars in this size range. So for example, a Peugeot 208 is a bit more plush, and also the 208 will have that kind of much more high-tech futuristic interior. But what I do quite like about it being slightly firmer is it does engage a little bit more of a sporty drive. It's not too harsh, although obviously the lower down the range you go, the thicker the tyres are going to be on the smaller wheels. So as you go up through the range, it's going to become slightly harsher over bumps. I'd say overall though, for a small car, it feels pretty stable and it never feels too fidgety on the road, which is always nice. In terms of your economy, they claim 53 mpg combined. Now, with my slightly erratic, slightly mixed driving, I've been getting more like 40. So, you know, your mileage may vary. I've had it as low as sort of low 30s, but that's, you know, driving all round town at full throttle. So it's not the worst engine in terms of economics, but at the same time, it might not blow your socks off if you're used to something with a more traditional hybrid system or a plug-in. But it's much of a muchness in this category. It's very similar in terms of performance, both in terms of how it drives and also the economy, to something like a Fiesta EcoBoost or, you know, a 1 litre turbo Polo or Fabia or Ibiza. All of those cars, they're all very similar in terms of the setup now, a 3-cylinder engine and your choice of gearboxes. This one being the 7-speed dual clutch, it's an interesting one. It's a bit hesitant, to be honest, away from junctions and stuff like that, which can be a little bit irritating, especially if you're in a tricky situation you want to get out of, because whilst it is fairly punchy, it's not a quick car, is it? So it's not going to be launching you away from the lights. But at the same time, it does provide a really nice smooth experience. Gear changes are snappy and quick. There's no manual control up here. You do have sequential down here if you want to. I don't know why you'd bother, to be honest, but the option is there. Overall, it's pleasant for day-to-day use. That's something else that's happened to me as well. Turning circle's pretty decent. When I changed this like an old school gear select, and it's got like a really small button on the back, and I've pinched myself with it a few times. It's just a bit of a yuck design. Let's see how she handles here. Right, everything's going to go flying. Whoa, wow, okay. I was expecting a lot more understeer than that, to be honest. That's quite good. It's a little bit more responsive in this mode as well in terms of the gearbox. So I'm in sport mode, and thankfully the sport mode doesn't hang the gears like it does in some other cars. So I'm grateful for that, especially with this sort of thrummy 3-cylinder. I'm quite a fan of 3-cylinder cars. Like, they do sound a little bit strained under load, but there's something about them. They're quite peppy. And this one has a surprisingly punchy mid-range, but of course it does run out of puff eventually. When you're just cruising along, things are relatively quiet. It's not too bad in terms of road noise and stuff like that. The only thing that I would say is that the driving assists can be quite intrusive. As I mentioned before, like even now I'm doing less than 40 miles an hour. I'm doing about 35, 36, and the lane keep assist is pulling me all over the place currently. But at the same time, these assists are quite nice to have when you're doing a lot of motorway driving. But again, is this the sort of car that you'd buy for that? You know. I'm going to send it down some country roads now. Right, let's see how the brakes do. Wow, okay. That was better than I was expecting, to be fair. You can feel the ABS working a little bit, but to be honest, for a standard non-performance car, brakes are relatively sharp. Yeah, kick down, a little bit sluggish for a dual clutch, but it's not terrible. Wonder if I put it in manual mode. Let's just see how quickly it... Yeah, it's actually quite snappy, to be fair. Although I hate using that because it's not inverted. You can feel that it is a little bit strained, but the mid-range punch is pretty good, and that mild hybrid definitely helps it a little bit off the line as well. Overall handling is quite responsive. It's definitely not on par with a Ford Fiesta, but that's the thing. The Fiesta and the Fiesta ST have been discontinued now, whereas the i20 and the i20N live on. You don't get an awful lot of feedback through the wheel, but it's enough. And yeah, there's not too much delay in the input and stuff like that, which is good. Turning isn't quite as immediate as in a Fiesta, but it's really quite fun. It's quite engaging to drive. I'm quite impressed with it. And let's be honest, most people are going to be just using these as little city runarounds, and they're not going to be tackling complex roads or, you know, tracking it or anything like that. But it's just nice to know that your little car can really handle things when you throw it around some corners. Makes for some fun drives. Yeah, it's not exactly Not exactly rapid, but it's sufficient for a city car. I'll tell you what though, this does give me a lot of confidence for the i20N. So there we go then, the i20, a relatively practical and also quite fun car to drive. I do think this is really worth your consideration if you're looking for a small hatchback. With the Fiesta gone, there's space in the market for something that is quite fun to throw down the twisties, but also quite practical and just easy to live with day to day. And this has that really good tech from the modern cars, but it's not too complicated. Most people could just come from any car and get in here and understand how things work. And also, overall, Hyundai have a great warranty. Sure, the interior isn't up to scratch in comparison to something more premium like a Polo or something like that, but also this is a little bit cheaper in terms of price. And yes, there are rivals out there that have some better hybrid options and stuff like that, but overall, for a car that you can just buy with confidence, that's not going to feel too unfamiliar to you if you're upgrading from something else, this is a really safe bet, and I think you'll really enjoy it. And especially this facelift model really sharpens things up and adds some base equipment that is really worth having. I would just say that the one thing that lets it down somewhat is the material use inside the car. You know, I get in my mum's 208 and it just feels like a much more premium place to sit. So thank you guys as always so much for watching. Thanks to Hyundai for sending me out the car. I really do appreciate it. And there's plenty more where this came from, so check out all the other reviews on my channel. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. It really does go a long way. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.